Good to go.
Cool. Thanks, G. I know you're on and off.
Yep.
All right. So, CiCi, appreciate you coming on today. Super cool background from the athlete to founder to also in the VC front. Just for people that don't know you, can you just give us a quick background and a little bit of your story from the I'll let you go on. You did really well. Your story's awesome.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. Super excited to be here. So yeah, I have a background as a pro tennis player, played on tour for about 5 years, had some injuries, wrist and elbow injuries that were kind of chronic and kept me out of the sport a little longer than I'd like. So ended up stopping just about 5 years ago now. It seems like yesterday, but also so long ago. I don't know how that's possible, but yeah, decided to stop playing. At that point, I jumped on board a sports tech focused fund about a mile down the road from where I was training. Absolutely loved it. Kind of merged, my background and my interests and kind of where I wanted to be post tennis. Stayed there for about 4 years, did my MBA while I was there. And I'm sure it was the kind of like athlete or budding entrepreneur inside of me that was coming through and really wanted to start my own firm. So decided to leave my last firm in July of last year. So just about a year ago and launched my own fund in August. So yeah, we're about a year in the books now. It's a 10 million fund. We're oversubscribed by a couple million. We're focused on sports tech and health tech, and we've got 5 portfolio companies looking at the spaces that I love the most. So couldn't be better.
And you were a child star, we'll call it, right? You had a lot of publicity from a young age. Did that play any factor, like the transition from the athlete then into the business world? Like, was that a big adjustment of, you were still in the young, early adult age, and then now it was like, that's over and that's all you've known for a long time. And that's where all your, call it, like everyone would, I'm sure all your conversations up to 22 years old were about tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely a really hard decision to make. And there's an element of opportunity cost there. And, spending so much time on a sport. And, I basically started playing tournaments when I was 7 or 8 years old and, was very serious about it for a long time. So it was definitely a tough decision, but just felt like it was the right time. And I was completing my degree online while I was playing. And it was actually right at the end of my undergrad degree when I decided to stop playing. So just felt like timing worked out, and it was a very tough decision, but I'm very happy that I ended up doing it.
When you look at the tennis landscape, I'm curious, coming from that world, there's been a lot of questions about, maybe Saudi money's coming in. I know they did the WTA, being on the inside and playing in it, training within it, and then now, looking at it from an investment perspective, like what are some of the gaps or where are things that can be improved? I'm just curious your overall thoughts coming up from the women's side of tennis.
Totally. I could talk all day about this. Andrew, you're giving me the right questions here. I think, let's take a step backward, start from like a scheduling perspective. The like WTA and ATP schedules throughout the year are so hectic. And we basically have less than a month off at the end of each year. And we're traveling, 40 plus weeks a year. And it's so taxing on players' bodies. I mean, more players are injured now than ever. We saw at Wimbledon. I think the most injuries ever recorded, given that the courts were damp from the rain, and there was a lot of other factors going into it, but players are getting injured more and more often now. I think something needs to change with the scheduling. And with that being said, there needs to be more prize money at the tournaments that players do play. So if that Saudi money does come in, I've been hearing talks. I actually don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but I've been hearing talks about different leagues that are coming in and different kind of schedules that are being proposed. So I don't think that would be a bad thing. If more money comes into the sport and giving athletes a chance to play maybe less tournaments and focus on their body a little bit more and kind of longevity, I think that would be an awesome turn of events.
And from a compensation perspective, I didn't go and look at your career earnings, but I'm sure you did fine. But some of your friends, maybe, doubles partners didn't do
Yeah.
as well. What was that like from the compensation? Is there a solution like a live golf or a PGA of one, more a salary type payment instead of prize earnings? Or how do you feel about that coming
Totally.
from the
Yeah, no, great question. I think that's what they're trying to head towards. I think they're making significant strides towards that. I think it definitely needs to be the case. And it's really tough because, players that are not inside like the top 100 of the rankings, a lot of players that I trained with and that, were friends of mine that are just, from the US that maybe just hadn't broken into that, top 100 yet, they're really not making any money. And so it's tough for them to, justify continuing to play if they're, just out of college or, kind of starting their career when they're literally losing money every single week and they're playing in, very low kind of level tournaments. So I know so many people that, have been in those shoes. So it's very tough, to kind of justify paying the lowest level a lot. And I know that, and I don't think there's a ton of benefit for, sponsors to be putting money into those events or even the tour. But yeah, maybe, some sort of a salary or, bringing up the prize money, I think would be a good solution there.
Is there a cutoff of the number of athletes? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of pro athletes in the tennis
It's,
world. Like where's that number of like, okay, here's an NBA, right? There's only so many players and the minimum
yeah.
is, I think it's like 750, 800,000 now. Like for tennis, like do you have a certain number of players and like where it makes sense?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those like funny sports that like really anyone could say they're a professional tennis player.
Like pro
So
golfer. It's like all the guys
exactly,
like,
yeah. Yeah. So and there are a lot of sports that you have to be like drafted to a team or a league and then you're a pro level, but with tennis, anyone could really like show up and try and be an alternate at like the lowest level of like pro tennis tournament, which is called like the ITF circuit. And it's, if you're able to play a match, technically you could call yourself a pro tennis player. So, there is like a ranking cutoff where you have to get a certain amount of points to be, I think it's like top 1,500 or top 1,000 in the world. And that's where the rankings kind of cut off. So I guess you could say like maybe around that, but technically anyone could kind of say they're a pro tennis player, if that makes sense.
that's interesting. And not to nail down too much on the tennis world, obviously you just have good perspective on it. So sort of
Oh yeah.
last thing, then we'll go more broad, but opportunities, like what are you looking at? Any current of the five portfolio companies touch, we'll just call it the racket sports ecosystem, or where are you seeing like now on the other side, hey, here are some places to maybe deploy capital back into it?
Yeah, we see a ton of like tennis tech companies, as I'm sure you can imagine with my background. A lot of those companies come to us for, funding or advice, things like that. So we try and support those as much as possible. We haven't invested in any tennis tech companies yet. I think tennis as a sport isn't obviously as watched or as big as something like an NFL or NBA or things like that. So it's tough for us to justify an investment in a tennis specific company that's only applicable to tennis. If it has, applicability to other industries or other sports, it becomes very interesting for us. So that's kind of how we look at like the tennis market. But I think there's a lot of opportunities within tennis to bring more data into it, give athletes, the ability to kind of like analyze their play or kind of analyze their matches a little bit better. We're looking at a couple companies in that space that, can be transferred then to other sports. So bringing data into it. I think that kind of falls under one of our like thesis verticals of like athlete performance. So anything that kind of can assist in an athlete's performance that can be on like the health and wellness side, the recovery side, even the wearable side of things. So we love that space as well. Again, haven't made a play specifically in that space, but definitely open and looking.
Now, how do you think about market sizes from the standpoint of you haven't made a tennis tech investment, not because maybe you haven't seen an interesting one, but because you don't think the market's big enough for just that? So how do you view that? It's a common thing in sports. How do you think about it, just as a whole internally at Cartan?
Yeah. So again, if we see a company that is singular sport specific, it's not super interesting to us, just given that market opportunity that you mentioned. So we try and only look deeper into companies that have, the ability to expand into multiple sports or multiple industries. So we have one company that, maybe started in one sport, but then are emerging to not necessarily other sports, but other industries as well. And that broadens out the market potential even more. So we definitely like to look at sports tech companies, but we want them to have applicability either in multiple sports or other industries as well.
Yeah, and go, I'm a little deeper on the health side. Like, where do you
Yeah.
see I don't want to say the blurred line, but where is it like here's sports and then here's more health, and like how do you internally separate that?
Yeah, it's tough. So in our like CRM where we track every company that we talk to, we have to bucket it into either sports or health. And there's a lot of crossover with some of the companies we look at. I'm sure you can imagine and find the same thing. So we, the kind of the blurred line is on the areas of like recovery or nutrition or sleep and things like that, where it could be athletes using it to enhance their performance, but it's kind of more on that like health and wellness side. So we do bucket those under health and wellness, as we think it's a, much larger market. But it's, there is, there is a bit of crossover there for sure.
And you're at an interesting thing where you're really founding a firm and then also deploying back into founders. How do you think about it as you're building your own entity versus, helping other people build their entities like internally, or I guess just personally, how do you, balance that, think about it, and make sure you're taking care of both sides of the coin?
Yeah, something I'm still learning every day and still trying to improve and make more efficient every day. I don't know if I'll ever have the answer to how I'm able to do that, but I think at the top of my mind, I want to make sure that, we put founders first. We make sure that we are supportive in as many ways as we can when we're either just, taking a first call with the company, giving them a quick answer, or, going through the diligence process, finalizing a deal, things like that. We want to make sure that they come first, and me building my own firm is second, in terms of like what's top of mind. Of course, want to make sure that our firm is built out as best and as efficient and built out the right way. But we want to make sure that investing is our number one priority, and working with founders and being respectful for them is kind of the most important thing for us. And then kind of on the back end, on weekends and later in the day and at night, I think is when I focus on kind of building the firm and focusing on that side of things.
So you're playing, you're done, you intern. I guess what excited you about call it the venture side of the space? Like what was the jump into that versus any particular, just because we don't see a ton of athletes typically follow that route. It's, I'm sure, a
Mhm.
lot of teammates, friends, right? Coaching and or
Yeah.
sales. What was it about that space that was like, all right, I like this.
Yeah. So growing up, kind of in the Silicon Valley area, I was very familiar with venture, and super interested in it from a young age. And I actually committed to play at Stanford. And I knew that, if I was going to go and play tennis in college, I knew I wanted to get into venture right away after college. And of course, that area is the right area to do so. But having turned pro about a year before I was supposed to go, I, changed plans a little bit. I completed my degree online, but kind of still in the back of my mind, I knew that post tennis, whenever my career was over, I wanted to get into venture as kind of like my next step post career. Of course, that happened way earlier than expected, but again, got the opportunity at the sports tech fund, which really actually opened my eyes to like sports tech venture. I had no idea that there were firms that kind of specialized in sports, tech venture. So was super excited when I saw that. Felt like it was the kind of perfect fit for me, and yeah, definitely was super excited to have that opportunity, and really opened my eyes to what I was passionate about post athletic career.
And as you've now done 5 deals, I'm sure this will change as some people start to listen to this over time. But what excited you about some of those? Where in sports you're like, all right, these feel, obviously the first ones are some of the most important ones in starting a fund. What was like, all right, these are the right ones. And you can go through them quickly, each if you want as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as a whole, the themes that, we really like right now, and that is the same as, when we first started investing on the sports side, I'll start with, we love fan engagement. That's a very broad, vertical, can encompass anything from, in-stadium solutions to, streaming solutions. We love kind of, and, can encompass a lot of other things, sports betting, things like that. We love kind of next generation of viewing, kind of catering towards maybe Gen Z or the next generation of sports fans. We think there are a lot of interesting applications there in terms of whether it's bringing more data into streaming events to give viewers a more like immersive kind of like viewing experience, or maybe overlay certain things that whether it's sports betting odds or things like that. We're super excited about like next generation of viewership. And a couple other areas in sports. We love, like I mentioned, athletic performance. I think from like my standpoint and my background, it's something that interested me a lot. And funny enough, a lot of companies that we chat to now in that space, I have used as an athlete, or I was maybe at the tail end of my career and I was trying out products. And I'm able to look at them from literally a use case perspective and an athlete perspective. So I find that to be super interesting. And then on the health side, we love like preventative health rather than reactive health. So, that ties into longevity, can tie into, nutrition, fitness as well. So we love the whole like sector of preventative health. I think it's the way that the landscape is shifting right now, and we definitely want to make like multiple plays in that space.
Very cool. What I guess if you want to go through some of your current five, or
Yeah.
just pick one or two, and just for founders and their sake to hear how you were thinking about, here's why this one interested us from, say, macro, from sports or health, and then here's what interested us from the founders of the team or the idea. If you just want to
Absolutely,
pick
yeah,
one or
and I
two.
can, yeah, for sure. I'll mention one that we touched on a couple topics earlier. So, a recent investment in a company called AI.io. They're in the sports like data and analytics space, working with like sports teams, leagues, organizations. They have a couple different pillars of their business, but in general, they're a data and analytics like AI sports company. And so we mentioned that, we like companies that have applications in multiple different sports. They've not only been able to expand to multiple different sports and have contracts with all the top leagues, but also have been able to move into other industries. So actually, I'm not sure if I can even chat about the conversations that they're having or the partnerships that they're signing, but moving into other industries that see the use of their like AI solution. And I think that's what interested us a lot, and what kind of like that market opportunity, that broader market opportunity is something that is super compelling for us from, a venture return standpoint, especially in the sports space. So love that one. Maybe another one I'll mention is called Tiny Health, on the health side. So they're in the like gut health space, very much ties into like preventative health, and, gut health as a industry has grown so much in the last, 5-10 years, and got so much, more awareness, and people understand that it's, a big part of your like overall like holistic, kind of health. So we love that space. Super excited about that founder and that founding team. So we bet very heavily on the team and the market opportunity of deals.
And when you bet on the team, what makes you go, okay, we're going to bet on this team? Like, what are some of the characteristics, or what are some of the things you've seen, at least through the first five, or that you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple different factors. I think number one, founders having a deep, set of expertise in the area that they're building in is obviously incredibly important. There has to be, some sort of like a connection that we feel to the founder in terms of like how dynamic they are, if we think they're going to be able to lead this industry with a company that they're building. We love to see like gritty founders being able to, be scrappy in certain situations, especially with market conditions over the last, year or so. And so, yeah, I'd say those are probably the top three. So, having deep expertise, being a dynamic founder and being gritty are super important to us.
And as you look at sports over the next 5-10 years, obviously that's going to be around your fund term cycle. What's exciting you? What are you keeping an eye on? Where are you going, okay, I need to have my ear to the ground on this, or you think people should be paying attention to as well? I'd be curious sort of how you're
Yeah,
thinking about that.
100%. I think, next generation of sports viewership, I know I mentioned it earlier. I think that's going to be a space that we make a couple plays in that like broader fan engagement space. I think, you know, when you think about the sports industry and you hear about, how viewership rates have gone up, year over year, especially the last few years, and how people are tuning more and more into sports and not really other like live cable type TV programs, but sports has continued to grow. So I think that's, sports it is showing us that we need to double down on the industry, and whether that's the next generation of viewing or just trying to engage the next generation of those fans better, I think is somewhere where we'll be spending a lot of time.
Yeah, and then and CC, I appreciate your time. Obviously this is for the public recording. So if you can just, for what's website, socials, where can people learn more? Where can people submit their decks? And then we'll open it up here. We'll come right to you, Randy, for a question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, submit your decks, cartancapital.com, just straight through how it spells. Or info@cartancapital.com is a good email to use. And then our socials are all, at Cartan Capital. So yeah,
And
always,
and
very
and
responsive to people who, send their decks in.
and Carton, any reason on the name or deeper meaning, or what's the
Yeah,
story there?
so it's actually my middle name and it's been a family name, for, probably 10 generations on my side.
Oh, cool. Love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Randy, hit us.
I have a three-part question, but they're all quick.
Awesome.
At 5'6", were you basically on the shorter side of players on tour? Part number two is, in getting prepared to see this, I went back and watched some footage of you, and you always had the two-handed backhand. I'm wondering if you ever experimented with a one-handed backhand. And then the third question is, my family is in Hillsborough, and my niece is your age. Do you recognize my last name?
Okay, so I'll start with number one. Yes, I was definitely one of the smaller girls on tour, both height and just like physicality wise. That's definitely why my body broke down. If you can imagine me playing against, girls that are over 6 feet, probably close to double my weight while I was playing. My body was going to break down at some point. I'm surprised it lasted that long. Number two, no, I never experienced it or experimented with a one-handed backhand. Felt like the two-handed was always the most comfortable for me. Chrissy Everett was my mentor growing up, and as a player, and she always encouraged the double-hander, and definitely wanted to go with what she said. So, and then third, I'm not sure. Obviously lived in Hillsborough for a good part of my growing up years. I'm not sure if I recognize the last name. Where did she go to school?
If you told me the name, it was a prep school. She has a brother and a sister that went to Stanford,
Okay.
and she ended up going to in Southern California. It's called it'll come to me. It's with Panoma. It's one of those campuses, you know what I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
about?
I think
But
so.
yeah. But Charlie is exactly your age, so I
Okay.
figured you might know her. But anyway, what about the two-handed forehand? Did you ever try that?
Maybe, I think I hit my first tennis ball when I was like 3 or 4. I might have started at that point, but yeah, quickly was more comfortable with the one.
Very cool. Thank you for your time
Yeah.
today.
Yeah,
Really,
of course.
I was doing research. Your story's awesome.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate the questions. That's awesome.
Tony, Miles, RJ, Jim, any of you guys got Tony? Looks like you do.
Yeah, yeah. I just curious in terms of obviously with tennis in particular. Right now, the company I run is called BetCaddy that focuses just on like the 6 major U.S. sports. But looking into next year, we'll expand to soccer, tennis, golf, and more kind of international style sports. When you have rights deals for the other leagues, U.S. Major leagues that have now exploded. WNBA recently, I think, just did 4 billion, or they're calling it now. But I know that like Warner Brothers just picked up the French Open. How do you see kind of like the broadcast rights, of tennis with so many different leagues going on, and that shifting? Do you see that eventually kind of consolidating, or how do you see that kind of affecting the viewership going forward here for tennis with younger audiences?
Yeah, great question. So funny enough, I actually do some sports broadcasting as well with Tennis Channel. I just did the French Open with them. That's the only Grand Slam that they had left. They lost the others to ESPN. So they had the French, and then now, of course, they don't. So, I think the Grand Slams still have great viewership, but the other tournaments outside of that are not very well watched. So it's pretty interesting. I think, the Grand Slams and the larger tournaments are very well watched, especially the finals. We've had record final viewership numbers at Grand Slams the last few years, especially with some new, exciting players to watch. So very excited about that. I think, there needs to be some consolidation or some help, I think, because Tennis Channel covers most tournaments on the calendar, but it's being able to kind of like market those tournaments and, market that there are tournaments going on pretty much every week to maybe the casual tennis viewer that turns on the US Open semis or finals, so I think being able to market it a little bit better and promote the sport is going to be huge for kind of the next generation of tennis fans. That was a great question.
and if I don't, just, you don't mind if I do a follow-up here?
Yeah, go for it.
In terms of, I have bet on you before and you won me money, so thank you.
Oh,
But
good.
how betting it goes in terms of tennis, right? I've seen, especially in DraftKings from a consumer sense, has very much pushed sports betting, more and more with tennis. And so with that being the case, right, as an individual sport, obviously I feel like that can help a lot with, growing names and betting and recognition. We've seen the NBA very much adopt it. We've seen the MLB adopt it. The NFL is obviously all over it now. Do you see that tennis is leaning more and more to the sports betting side, especially with how popular sports betting is in Europe and other countries?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of popularity is being brought into the sport via sports betting, which is interesting. Whereas I think sometimes, you'll get like maybe in another sport, for an example, like you'll get a diehard football fan that, bets on their favorite team. Whereas for tennis, I feel like, you could get a new fan to the sport via a DraftKings, showing odds for a certain match and then being like, oh, let me look into like what this match would be like, or, this matchup. So I think it's sometimes the opposite, given that tennis isn't like a very viewed sport outside of the main Grand Slams. But I think it's helping the sport a lot. I know a lot of tennis sports bettors, and a lot of players do get hate from them, I think on social media, but it is bringing a lot of viewership into the sport. So yeah, totally. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I'm an avid tennis bettor. Did pretty good on Wimbledon. So,
Love it.
so
Love it.
good run.
It's really
good run
fun.
there.
You had any
very much
parlays?
so.
You had any parlays for the draw?
I did. One of my friends, his name's Tim, and I call him Wimbledon because he's the best women's tennis bettor I've ever seen. And he was
Love
just
it.
every morning he was just betting them through. So I was very much, it paid the rent for the apartment for the month. So it was
Nice.
a nice
There you
little
go.
go around.
That's the goal,
Tony,
right?
Tony,
That's it
I'd
right
like to
there.
connect with you in like 11 months, Tony.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say, CiCi, it's Lick Wilmerding. Do you know that high school?
Okay. That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Anyway, nice meeting you. And Tony,
Awesome. Yeah.
I'll call you later for those picks.
Yeah, I got you.
So I'll just fill a gap in here before anyone else, if you gather your thoughts. I know some of you just hopping in, you missed a lot of the conversation, but where from a stage level, where are you investing, check sizes, sort of the basics of the fund, where are you guys living at the current moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So our 5 portfolio companies have all been Series A. We have the ability to look at seed as well. Kind of our only benchmark is that the companies have gone to market already. And yeah, our initial check size in a company starts around the $250,000 mark and scales up to just under $1 million. I would say we have LPs that can help round out our rounds that can write massive check sizes. So yeah, we can have kind of a broader range there, which is nice.
So how many fund one, you've done 5, how many are you looking to do in the first fund?
I'd say around 20 to 25 for this fund. So we're very early stages of deploying, oversubscribed the fund by a few million now. So just focus on deploying, which is a good feeling for sure.
Got it.
Mhm.
Anyone else questions? I know some of you missed a lot of the gaps, so it makes it a little tougher. All right, I'll go on.
Another one.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. Keep
Yeah,
ripping them. Yeah.
All right, no, I'll go for it. Yeah, so we're launching next month in terms of our platform, and I've talked with a number of firms that kind of given us a benchmark of metrics that they're looking at, just like, hey, you hit these, let us know, right? And with that being the case, I like to, we're right now going through like the pricing strategies of like, hey, do we want to charge from day one or go free, with the freemium model or whatever that may be, but when you're looking at that launch kind of metrics from a company that's starting out, obviously with the sports calendar, we feel it's very advantageous. However, right, just I'm just trying to find out, hey, do you want to prioritize kind of revenue and having a smaller subset of users that are producing more revenue or engage with the platform that way, or would you like to kind of see with companies you're looking at have thousands and thousands of users, but they might be just coming to the platform for free? Is there like a preference, or do you see some of the companies that you're looking at that, go one way or the other?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we don't have a specific preference to either. I think for us, the companies that at least that we've invested in so far and have kind of seen the growth path over the last few years, I think is likely the latter, starting kind of with that freemium model, getting users on board, finding kind of users that are kind of super like loyal users and kind of love the platform and you know, are able to create, you know, network effects from that standpoint. I think that's how we've seen a lot of kind of like easy, or not, I wouldn't say easy, but easier growth paths. So yeah, you know, for us, we love to see companies that have an extremely loyal user base. I think that's the biggest thing that we look at rather than like revenue or user numbers. But if we feel that the company has a really, you know, loyal and user base that loves the product or company, then we feel it's in a really good spot.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
From a deck, go ahead. Was that Miles?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Miles.
Okay. Hi, CiCi. Nice and
Hey.
pleasure meeting you.
You too.
So you talked a lot about like fan engagement and you looking into that. I kind of want to pack that a little bit. Because when it comes to like fan engagement, there's so many different, you know, aspects to that. And you mentioned things on like the media side or the streaming side, the broadcasting side. But when it comes to the like consumer side or like the general fan side, what are certain things you look at as far as like the fan engagement, fan interactions, and the technology that goes to evolving that? Are those things that you guys look into as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. I think we do love that space. I think like fan loyalty or like customer loyalty is a big space that we're looking into. We haven't found a company that we've, you know, moved forward with yet in terms of like finalizing a deal, but have gone deep into a few companies in that space. So loyalty is huge for us. And then, yeah, I guess, you know, that ties into sports teams and leagues, like understanding their fans better. I think that's a really big market as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then one last thing, as far as because there's a lot of like new sports up and coming, getting a lot of popularity, and we see it like distributed out through different social medias. And what do you think like will help the expansion or the viewership of those sports that are up and coming and establishing, you know, a loyal fan base and growing their audience?
Yeah, super interesting. You know, first sport that comes to mind, I'm sure you can imagine, is pickleball with my tennis background. And you know, they've gotten some pretty incredible backers. They have incredible, you know, pro athletes that have bought teams. I think that's the best way to grow a sport, is to get big names on board, backing the sport, whether it's with their own personal brand or obviously through capital, but you know, bringing their own brand is something that's so helpful for kind of emerging leagues like that. So I think yeah, getting the right names on board, making sure that kind of they have like a clear growth path, I guess, you know, because they're, you know, for the pickleball example, they're I would say they're kind of competing and for tennis like viewership minutes from fans. I don't know too many I guess like tennis fans that would watch like solely just like switch and watch pickleball right now, but I know some that maybe are not as like loyal to tennis, that maybe would watch a little bit of both. So kind of they're competing in a way. So becoming like established, I think is really interesting. Like when I think about pickleball, I think of it as like a very fun social sport. I love playing myself. I don't know if I see it as a professional sport. Like when you think about like Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, you know, I don't see them in the same light as like the top pickleball players, if that makes sense. So I think it's just a more, tennis obviously is so much older, it's so much more prestigious, so it's really tough to compete against it in terms of like viewership minutes and in terms of like maybe like validity of the sport, I guess, if that makes sense from like an athlete perspective. I might be biased. I do love pickleball, but I just wouldn't spend a ton of time watching it. So I think, you know, a long-winded answer to your question is, you know, having the right names on board that can help like validate it as a professional sport and be able to, you know, push the brand forward is going to be super important.
That's good. Okay.
Great question.
I appreciate that, CiCi.
I could talk about that all day.
Definitely.
Go ahead, Merrick. Muted.
Yeah, thanks. I think I joined late. Greetings from Europe. Good evening. I want to ask about where do you invest? Is it US, Europe? And the second thing is that besides capital, what support are you giving to the founders as well?
Yeah. So first question, yeah, we invest globally. 4 of our 5 portfolio companies are based in the US, and one of them is based in London. So very, very open to global investments. The last firm I was at did global, so I feel very comfortable global. And then in terms of where we provide the most support, very heavy on the sports tech side in terms of our network, or on the sports side, excuse me, in terms of our network to professional athletes, teams, leagues, organizations, extremely heavy in tennis, but given the fact that I was represented by IMG as a player, a lot of connections into other sports via that agency. So have, helped our portcos basically in terms of connecting them to athletes, to be brand ambassadors, to be partnered with organizations. I just closed a deal for one of our portfolio companies with the National Tennis Association. So things like that, obviously heavy network on the sports side, but trying to, still be as broad as possible, or sorry, on the tennis side, but still be as broad as possible in terms of other sports. And then our LP base is actually very heavy on the health side. It's more on the sports, but we have like one LP is the founder and CEO of a $10 billion healthcare company. So building out the health network as well, but definitely supporting our startups as much as we can with our network in sports. Usually the companies, even that we look at on the health side, have some application in sports usually. So we can help from that side.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
CiCi, from I know Matt's here, Arco Murray. Do you guys look at Sportainment at all? They've built most of the top golfs, and we're seeing a ton of new concepts. I'm curious if you're looking at any of those or any of that area at all.
Yeah, we love that space. That's something that we're looking heavily into for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I was gonna hop in. I read through some of like your newsletters before
There you go.
the Sportainment one. Yeah, it was almost virtually all of our clients, I think, were on that newsletter,
Awesome.
which I found to be interesting. Yeah. And I wanted to ask a quick question if I could slide in here really quick.
Yeah.
You and Miles were talking about pickleball a little bit and how that's an emerging sport. And I've seen other ones with padel and even lacrosse and cricket, especially in the US. How do you decide? There's so many like operators in the space. How are you deciding between which one to invest in, and how early do you want to get invested in there? Is like before their first venue, or do you find yourself more helpful after they've kind of gotten started already?
I think we can be more helpful once they've gotten started already. I think it's all about kind of like their first like go to market, I would say, in the sports, in the sportainment space and the like emerging sports space. So kind of understanding how those first events went, then we can kind of better position it to potential partners or potential athletes that can, help support the brand. So usually I'd say like once it's a little bit established.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I feel like with your pro athlete connections, that'd be huge to help them if they don't have some connection like that already as they're launching.
Yeah, I think it's incredible, and not saying myself, but the pro athletes in my network, it's been awesome to see them propel some of our portfolio companies, and we've been able to see like hard metrics of how either sales have gone up or in whatever way they've been able to help the portco. So it's been fun to see for sure.
And then I guess last question, if someone has one, then I'm gonna finalize it, and then we're gonna 11:50. We're wrapping this up. So if anyone has one, now's the time. All right, CiCi. So obviously you receive a lot of decks for the most part. People want to see an overview first. Anything standing out or anything that you would advise of ways, maybe you didn't invest in a company, but they put something that at least got a call, what are some of those things getting your attention where you're like, all right, I at least need to talk to the team building this?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of one off the top of my head where it was an earlier stage company than maybe we typically look at, but they mentioned some of the partners that they have in their deck and the feedback that those partners have given, and kind of feedback from, pilot partnerships or things like that. And showing, again, I think, the question that Tony had, kind of the loyalty of those customers or clients is so important to us when looking at companies. So understanding that, and we've taken calls just from seeing that in a deck for sure.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and just joining a
Yeah.
bunch of us males to spit game. So
I love it.
it's been awesome.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for the questions. It was awesome chatting with everyone.
Yeah, so we'll get this up next week, and then yeah, I'll see the rest of you tomorrow. And I don't know if G's coming on. Thanks, Randy. But yeah, appreciate you, CiCi.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks guys. Feel free to reach out via, website or email anytime.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks guys.
Thank you.
Real quick, CiCi, what's the best way to reach you? Would it be on LinkedIn or would you prefer email?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. Our mailing email is info@cartancapital.com. We're super responsive to that as well. I only have one team member. It's literally just the two of us, plus 8 advisors that work on this day to day. So it's me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, LinkedIn works too. Yeah.
LinkedIn. Okay. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So I want to talk more about that fan engagement side. So
Yeah.
I'll reach out to you there.
Yeah, I would love it. Awesome. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. You guys have a good one.